Talk. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I am good, Mr. Solomon. I had a reasonably productive day today, and I was most gratified, although there was no morning rain in my immediate area of Georgetown. The skies were overcast enough to keep the Mr. Sunshine at bay. Today was a nice day. How about you?
Yeah, I had a pretty productive day, very relaxing. Managed to gather the last pieces of material that I need to get stated to work tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
So I'm good to go.
Outstanding.
Productive day.
Outstanding. Well, good evening and hello to our listening audience, those of you tuned in on your radio dial on Bobo 103.1 FM, as well as those tuned in to our simulcast on YouTube and Facebook with the key search word Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. Today is Thursday, and again, I say that as much as for your reminder as it is for my own, the 26th of June. That means tomorrow is Friday, and the weekend is just around the corner. So it has been a good day, good week, a short week, and hopefully it'll be another productive day here on the program.
Every day is a productive day here on the program, Mr. Harris.
Quite right.
Absolutely.
You're a good man for that. Well, coming up today is going to be another open mic day. The phone lines will be open at 745-2626. You can give us a buzz if you either want to take us in a particular direction or you want to ask a question for any of the topics that we were discussing yesterday. You did say you would ruminate overnight on the whole Cayman National sale. I wonder if you managed to ruminate and come up with any other
I did ruminate a little bit. If you'd give me just a minute, I'm doing one of my favorite tasks of sending out links.
Not a problem. We got a caller on the line. We'll take that call first. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Aston, how you doing?
I'm good, my brother. How are you?
Not too bad, I just have a friend that do 7-year overtime, and then they give him, I think, 12 months or 13 months in Northwood.
He was stayed over for 7 years?
Yeah, he was married but stayed over for 7 years.
Okay.
Now, my thing to that is somebody should be responsible for them. The immigration task force or whatever should have something to pop up. Now, this guy is doing time that immigration not doing their work, but we have to pay them.
Yes.
Something is not right there.
Well, I don't disagree with you that, the fact that he overstayed 7 years and it didn't ring any alarm bells, certainly, one would expect that when work permits expire, there is some notice given to, Customs, Immigration, Border Control to notify them. But I also can't remove the responsibility on the individual who very clearly knew he needed a work permit to be here. And when it expired, he, didn't do the right thing and depart or leave and arguably evaded. So I think it's a 50-50 thing, but I take your point.
I see what you're saying, but this person is not on a work permit. This person was married.
Married to
and
a
man is yes. A man is a fool to what you don't know. That's how I grew up. You don't grow and know everything. You learn. Now, it's dumb to the law. So he is now married to a Caymanian and thinks everything is okay.
Right.
Or they still lock him up. And his wife is out here.
So I try to see if I can understand that. You're saying that the person is married to a Caymanian.
Right.
So what were the terms for locking him up? Because he
overstayed. Because, like I said, nobody knows the law. As a matter of fact, Cayman law just rewrite whenever.
So did he not notify immigration when he got married and thus when he got his passport stamped? Is that the sort of circumstances?
Right. Because, everybody thinks that you're married to Cayman, so everything is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying, if everything is not fine, but what I'm saying now, when you look at it, I think they should have given the guy a warning. No, you put somebody in Northwood against months of kind of people for little stupid misunderstandings, thing like that. How you expect that person to come back out good? Because I know I wouldn't come back out good.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely not something productive to do to a family. And if you're saying to me that Yes.
And this man wife is out here now, waiting on him, trying to make life on their own. God
Right.
knows what they have to do. You know, I don't.
Do they
think,
have kids?
I think somebody, no,
No.
but I
Good
think
thing for that.
somebody in immigration should be responsible and also do time, not do time, but take a payment, something off the pay or something. Somebody have to be in charge of knowing who is overstay and who is not.
But let me ask you. But let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. Certainly, if the individual, was on a work permit up until the point that he got married,
It was 7 years. 7 years.
7 years. So certainly, to your point, after the first year of not, seeing any renewal or otherwise or notice, certainly, I can see your point that maybe they might want to do an investigation to a certain extent, and who knows, maybe they couldn't find the individual. But again, how would immigration otherwise know he got married to a Caymanian unless the individual came forward? You know what I mean? So again, it's
a second marriage. Let me get you. It have nothing to do with me, I just look at it and I say, boy, something is not right there.
Yes.
But
No.
when you look at it, that's when immigration and the police, everybody should come together and have a joint thing where, hello, this person live here. Why take somebody's number or an address from somebody if they don't know where the hell to find them?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Check up on them. Say, hey, this pop up. This man is not. His time finished this month.
Yeah.
Just like the insurance. Oh, they will notify you the minute you need your money.
Tell you that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Why they can't have that system?
That's right.
Yeah, you raise a very good point. It is a little bit challenging to see how anyone could be staying in the country for 7 years.
7 years.
And immigration
And
not
now-
know it.
Exactly.
And not go to enforce it.
The civil, we here now have to pay that person in Northwood. Because if you think we're not paying for that, we're paying for it.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So we have to pay for overstay.
You have to pay for it, but I mean, I first of all take on the gravity of putting someone in prison. This is a very serious step when you're saying that you're going to remove the person's rights and freedom, and especially when you are separating family. And again, luckily in this case, he doesn't have kids, But
It's not lucky, Austin. He's a man. He have responsibility. Responsibility is just like a kid. So they have a piece of property now with a young Caymanian trying to start off with there, which I know. Then what happened to that property? He's not working. He's up in Northwood. God knows what he have to do to defend himself up there.
Right.
Then come back to society. Then what?
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just an ignorant brother. I just, I don't see it.
Thank you for flagging it.
No, not at all.
All right.
And thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. It gives us something to think
Cool.
about. God bless. But just thinking out loud. Okay, so the chap gets married. Presumably, he got married according to the legal requirements. So he, went before a priest or a preacher. He would have registered that marriage, presumably. That would have gone on some official registry, therefore, popping up the name. We do know that in the past, the marriage registry sometimes operates in a silo, or general registry operates in a silo to immigration. There's no record or information sharing across government, though I had hoped or thought that had improved over the years, particularly in the whole e-commerce digitized world that we now live in. But maybe, again, the government is still, in many respects, stuck in the dark ages. But certainly, if he got married and it did pop up, it certainly have alerted someone. To the caller's point and our own, 7 years seems like a long time to assume a person is no longer on the island. I mean, again, you can verify this by, your departure records. Go to the airport and talk to the airlines and say, do you have a person for, Joe Schmo leaving the island, yes or no? And then, of course, to the caller's point, you have a residential address, you have a telephone number, you have a last known employer when he was on work permit. All of those are avenues to conduct an investigation. But why wait 7 years and there is no culpability on the official arm of immigration, but instead you scoop the man up and send him off to prison? It just seems like an injustice to me.
Yeah, and it definitely seems extreme. I mean, I've seen persons here on the island, again, engaging in business practices and just about everything else, and then they end up getting a fine or a slap on the wrist. I mean, like I said, incarceration to me is something very serious. I would imagine that should be last resort.
You would think.
And unless there's something that I'm missing, it does not sound right to me, because there is no way, and I've seen some cases before where enforcement will get up and be looking for an individual, and this individual has been without a permit, let's say a couple of months.
Right.
Now, whether someone flagged it for them or not, I have no idea. But unless I'm missing something, 7 years, I would like to believe that there's a system somewhere that says, hold on, does this guy have a permit? And you should be looking for them. And the person is, I don't know, something. I want to infer I'm missing something. I want to infer that we are missing something in that store, because that does not sound right.
Yeah.
Based on what we've heard, it definitely doesn't sound right.
No, not at all. I would only encourage the listener and the person who called, reach out on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. Perhaps you can share the individual's name, his full name, and if you have a date of birth, that will be helpful. You can just shoot that to us in a WhatsApp message. I can't promise you we'll be able to find out any more detail ourselves, but we do still know 1-2 politicians who might be able to at least be able to provide some background and illuminate or elucidate both ourselves and our listening audiences.
And again, just to repeat for anyone who might just be joining the program, we got a caller from someone who stated that there's an individual that was here on the island working, who ended up marrying a Caymanian, married the Caymanian for 7 years, and in that period of time, then they ended up being locked up because they would have failed to go through the proper process in terms of paperwork, etc.
Regularizing his or her immigration
regularizing things. And again, it just seems odd to me. It seems odd to me that that's going to happen, because, yeah, there's paperwork and stuff to be filled out. There's a proper process. But, one, why was this not flagged in the system? Why was this person not being searched down for more than after a couple of months or a year, whatever? And again, let's just say, again, taking it based on purely on what we're hearing right now from the caller, if it is a case that this individual overstayed in simple amount of paperwork, you really got to ask yourself, is that something that you're locking someone away for? And again, how long that person's being locked away for, I have no idea. But I would imagine that fining the person, certain things, I don't know. So I'm interested. I'm appealing. I know at least one person who was involved in the enforcement side of immigration. Maybe that person can give me a text, a call, because some kind of clarity on this would be much appreciated. It doesn't sound right.
No, it doesn't sound right. And, not only does it disrupt a family, but it also doesn't do much for building my personal confidence in the border
system
security that we have, operating in the Cayman Islands. I mean, let's face it. You mean to tell me we lose foreign nationals all the time and for as long as 7 years and nobody knows where they are? I mean, again, it takes me back to the whole discussion we were having earlier this week about the number of persons that just turn up missing in the Cayman Islands, and we have no idea what happened. I mean, we're 72 square miles surrounded by water. You can't swim to the BRAC, or you can't swim to Honduras. You certainly can't swim to Florida. So what?
Yeah.
We have an air unit, we have radar. Again, I just do not understand the border security officials in this instance. And then again, to be overstaying for 7 years is a long time. And someone's going to have to explain to me what was enforcement doing during all of this, because we have seen recent reports where immigration enforcement have raided, I think the choice word is, raided a number of construction sites or otherwise, suggesting that they're being proactive. They're checking on work permits and persons who are overstaying and working illegally. All of those things I see as good news, a good item, because it is proactive work being done to protect our borders and also to ensure that the job market stays at least as best as possible, fair and balanced. But then you hear a story like this one, and it does cause you to scratch your head. It's like, how, if you can lose a person for 7 years and no alarm bells going off to say, maybe after year one, okay, maybe after 2 years, we should do something about it, then it doesn't give me confidence when they say we are strengthening our borders to limit the influx of drugs and guns.
Yeah.
If you can lose a person, God help you to find drugs and guns. You know what I'm saying?
And again, it also speaks to some of the silos that exist in the government where these departments are not necessarily communicating, because I think you raised a very good point when you talked about a marriage officer. So, assuming that this was some unholy marriage that took place in the bush in some strange
Baby,
night.
I love you. You love me?
On some strange night, Good Friday, under a birch tree. I would imagine that this actually did take place as a legal marriage, right, with an officer. And where they perhaps at this point in time have no obligations under the law, I would imagine, be registered.
Yeah.
And again, if there should be some flagging, right?
Yes.
Flagging. Someone just got married.
Yes.
But again, it also speaks to perhaps one of the things that could be done in the future is where you're perhaps having marriage officers at least say, you're a foreign national, you're getting married to Caymanian, you make sure and run this through the proper process.
Yeah, you may want to go in and get your passport stamped.
You need to get your passport stamped now. You need to go and apply for your permanent residence and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, or at least your RARC, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like I said, to me, incarceration is a serious thing. You are saying to someone, I am completely removing your rights of mobility, and you're locked up, and God knows how long, and you're separating family on top of that. And like I said, fortunately in this particular case, not that it makes it that much better, but he doesn't have kids. But that is a very serious thing, and one really has to ask. I really want to know what exactly is taking place, because I'd like to believe we're missing something.
I hope
what has taken place that allows you to go to that level?
I hope we're missing something because, certainly if the writer does share the name and date of birth, I would also ask him to share the name of his defense attorney, and I'll put it in my category of who not to call when I find myself
who not
in
to
trouble.
employ. Yeah.
Who not to employ.
Yeah.
This guy is not going to help me at all.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Again, it doesn't make any sense. It does have us scratching our head, as my colleague said. We hope that we're missing something. There must be some aspect, some detail that hasn't been included that we have been made aware of. But at face value, it does strike us as very odd. I
have seen in government departments where, again, somebody might be applying for certain things, organization. I don't want to mention, but you apply and then you keep getting letters back and forth from the government agency that's saying you need this and then you need this and you need that. It's like, customer service would be nice here. Maybe you could meet with the person and let's just get all that resolved at one point in time. So there is all of those unnecessary bureaucratic processes in which, in many instances, customer service seems to be lacking. But like I said, for now, unless we can hear something different, I would love to get the individual to pass on as much information as possible so that we could discuss this, because at the minimum, we surely have to be able to learn something from this. But for now, I would like to believe something has to be missing, because it is a very serious thing when you're saying that you're going to be locking someone up in prison, especially if you're saying, I know you're married, which technically makes everything all right, but you're kind of missing some paperwork. So I just don't like that. I'm going to throw you in prison.
Quite right.
Sounds pretty.
No. It does seem very odd. And again, if we can't find a person after 7 years and no alarm bells go off, then please don't come to me asking me for resources to protect our borders, because I know if you cannot find an individual who may be lawfully, unlawfully here on the island, then you have no hope in a snowball's chance in hell of finding drugs and guns, which are intended to be smuggled, and therefore secrecy is the order of the day. I don't get the impression that this individual who got married to a Caymanian was intending to be secretive.
Right.
He just assumed, I landed me a Caymanian wife. I don't no longer need a work permit. Bravo to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? But as we also stated yesterday or day before and reminded folks, ignorance is no excuse in the eyes of the law. I did not know the requirements or policies, or I did not know will not satisfy a court. But again, like we say, there's no legitimate justification from what we have heard for it to have gotten as far as it has, and certainly for the individual to be thrown in prison. Hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. Again, I encourage the individual who called to just simply shoot us a message on WhatsApp, 928-2562. Send us the full name of the individual. If you can get a date of birth from him, that would be great. And that will assist us in our endeavors, if you will, to do a little sleuth work and try to figure out what exactly were the circumstances and, again, get back to him and the wider listening audience. 53 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. I don't want to miss the opportunity to share a wee bit of good news. And whilst we don't have a lot of good news in the headlines, one of the things that I consider good news, particularly during this hurricane season and any hurricane season, is Saharan dust. Saharan dust, weather-wise, has now become my new best friend because as we discovered definitively that Saharan dust does inhibit cyclone formation, specifically major storms like hurricanes. And we see in the media today that a large plume of Saharan dust that came off the west coast of Africa has now moved across the Atlantic Ocean and has now entered the Caribbean Sea. Over the coming days, the dust plume will enter the atmosphere above the Cayman Islands, causing the sky to look a wee bit hazy. According to experts, Saharan dust plumes are normal and fairly frequent at this time of year. In the early part of the summer, they bring a silver lining. The dust plumes create dry air conditions in the atmosphere, which in turn inhibits the formation of tropical cyclones. So we got more dust, so to speak, on the way, and I suppose that is a very good thing, good news in terms of the formation of hurricanes, particularly when we talk about the formation of the first tropical storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, which we talked about yesterday. The good news is it is far, 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 far away from us, and it is not expected to turn into anything. Just a quick look at your weather. The weather synopsis for today and tomorrow suggests that a tropical wave located across Jamaica is expected to drift across the Western Caribbean, continuing the chance of some showers tonight. Thereafter, a gradual decrease in cloud coverage and showers are expected as fresh winds and yet the Saharan dust spread across our area. Your forecast for tonight calls for partly cloudy skies with, again, another 40% chance of showers and possible thunder. Temperatures will fall to the upper 70s. Winds will be east to southeast at 10 to 15 knots, and seas will be moderate to rough with wave heights of 4 to 6 feet. As was expected yesterday, small craft are being urged this evening to exercise caution over the open waters. Turning to tomorrow we can expect partly cloudy skies for your Friday with a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will rise to the low 90s, but with the humidity factor and heat index is going to feel more like 101. Winds will be east to southeast at 15 to 20 knots. Seas will be moderate to rough with wave heights again of 4 to 6 feet. So that's a quick look at what is happening outside with your weather for the next 24 hours. And again, I'm sorry I told you to pack your umbrella today. Again, I didn't see any rain where I was at, but it did threaten. And hey, better to be safe than sorry, right?
It rained last night, Mr. Harris.
Oh, my goodness, did it rain last night? How grateful we were for it.
And in East End as well. I went there late last night.
You know rain's falling. It came on when it rains in East End.
Yeah, you know that.
It is definitely a rainy night in Georgia.
How much time do we have, Mr. Harris? Time check.
A minute, 20 seconds.
A minute to win it. So I will say, first of all, that I'm understanding that the WRC does have a system that they communicate insofar as when a foreigner is a Caymanian. And that has been in place for quite some time. I'm understanding maybe as much as early as 2022. Again, we don't know the specifics of this incident that this gentleman called about, but there is that sort of communication, which again, if that is indeed the case and they get flagged, I really don't see how we're getting into this particular situation. Maybe something is missing.
Yep.
Now, I can't help to overlook, but someone texted and said, man in prison overstayed for 7 years. It could be his wife.
His wife turned him in. I'm sick of him already. Come get this man.
But it's true. It gave me It reminds me of that joke somebody said a couple of days ago. So anyway, let me finish this.
20 seconds.
It could be that his wife wishes wants to get rid of him. But it reminds me of the joke where the guy says he got the Spanish lady pregnant, so he contacted ICE.
It is entirely very possible.
Lord.
Well, that's all the time we have for you right now. We're going to pause, take a short commercial break, check in with the top of the hour news as I pause to make sure we don't get cut off. But there'll be more Straight Talk still to come. Again, the phone lines are open, 745-2626. Give us a call when we come back. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's going on in Parliament. Today is Thursday, and that means it's Opposition Day. So keep it locked to Straight Talk. We will be back on Bobo 103.1.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has described the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities as the most complex and secretive military operation in history, but gave few new details about their impact. He spent much of his news conference berating the media for focusing on a preliminary assessment that raised questions about how efficient the operation had been. John Donnison was listening.
It was pretty forthright and certainly not backing down on the administration's view that their mission was accomplished and that they obliterated, to use one of the words Pete Hegseth used, Iran's nuclear program. Now, we had the head of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Inspectorate, saying today that they believed that the centrifuges at Fordo were no longer working. We didn't get any proof today that the 400 or so kilos of enriched uranium that Iran needs to develop a bomb, whether that was at the site when it was hit.
The Iranian foreign minister has now acknowledged what he called serious damage from the strikes, saying an assessment was underway. The Hamas-run health authorities in Gaza say at least 40 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes that intensified overnight. Rushdie Abu-Oluf reports.
One of the deadliest strikes targeted busy market in central Gaza, where Israeli drones targeted Hamas police force. The 18 people were killed. Local resident told the BBC that officers wearing masks and civilian clothing arrived at the market to investigate the alleged looting of a humanitarian aid. As the war in Gaza goes on, diplomatic effort by the Qatari and Egyptian mediators are continuing.
The U.S. State Department says it's approved $30 million in funding for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a controversial U.S. and Israeli-backed body set up to distribute aid in the war-torn Gaza Strip. In March, Israel blocked crucial supply routes into Gaza, leading to warnings of imminent famine. 3 days of national mourning have been declared in the Central African Republic after 29 pupils were killed and hundreds injured in a crush during high school exams. More details from Julian Bedford.
The students had been sitting an exam when work on a nearby electricity transformer resulted in a short circuit. Local papers describe a scene of chaos, with bodies, many of them girls, found in corridors and stairwells. Others jumped from first-floor windows, and the number of those wounded runs into the hundreds. It's the latest in a string of accidents in the Central African Republic. It's one of the world's poorest countries, and civil conflict has greatly limited the ability of the state to provide for its citizens.
World News from the BBC. The United Nations says it's deeply concerned by the violence that left 16 people dead and hundreds injured in nationwide protests in Kenya on Wednesday. Most of those killed died from gunshot wounds. Thousands of businesses were looted and many razed to the ground after battles with police. Exactly 80 years since the signing of the United Nations founding charter, the Secretary-General has warned that the institution is facing unprecedented attacks on its core principles and purposes. Antonio Guterres told the General Assembly the UN Charter was not optional, but the bedrock of international relations. He said it was not an a la carte menu of pick-and-choose options. The British journalist Anna Wintour has announced she's standing down as editor of US Vogue magazine after almost 40 years in the role. More details from Noor Nanji.
Anna Wintour has been queen of the fashion front row for decades, and over her long career, she's become one of the most recognisable and influential figures in the fashion industry. Famous for her dark sunglasses and sleek bob haircut, she's widely rumoured to have inspired the character of Miranda Priestley, the terrifying magazine editor played by Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada. She is now stepping back as editor-in-chief of American Vogue, but will continue as Vogue's global editorial director, as well as chief content officer for its parent company, Condé Nast.
A pizza restaurant chain in South Korea says it will sue a former branch after it emerged it was extorting money from customers through forced delivery tips. The store had been adding a $1.5 mandatory tip to deliveries by having the customers select an option labelled "I'll enjoy it" to complete their order. The only alternative was to cancel, meaning the customer was forced to pay the additional fee if they wanted their food. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook. We're your hosts, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, and it is another Open Mic Thursday here on the program. The phone lines are open at 745-2626. And or you can also reach out to us on our WhatsApp number 928-2562. Ellio, did you manage to finish the comments you wanted to make on the whole overstay of 7 years and in particular the message that came into you?
Yeah, I got the two messages out again. Like I said, it was you probably laugh about it, but there's probably some level of gravity to it. I mentioned both of them in terms of someone with respect to marriage situation, and the other one is simply that there is a marriage communication that occurs in some way, shape, form, or another within WRC.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the author seemed to be suggesting that system may very well have been around for quite some years, at least from around maybe 2022 or something like that.
All right.
So again, we hope to get more information. Like I said, just based on the information that we have, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it certainly does not.
So it's best for us to infer that there's something missing from that story.
Yeah, I think
given the government the benefit of the doubt.
Yes. No, I think you're absolutely right. There has to be something we're missing, and I will note that we haven't received any WhatsApp messages highlighting the full name and or date of birth. So there's really very little, if anything at all, that we can do other than continue to talk about it and hope that someone from the powers that be may recognize this case and might be able to provide some further elucidation to your point, perhaps even highlighting maybe the full details for that which appears, anyway, to be missing from the conversation. 8 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock is the time in studios, and the Parliament of the Cayman Islands is presently in session, and today is Thursday, and they are in the second sitting. Obviously, the session began yesterday with the throne speech. Normally, the throne speech would be followed by the budget address and the strategic policy statement, but that didn't happen, though the governor had a lot to say, and I want to get to that maybe after this, but I just want us to stay current if we possibly can. Today, well, actually, let's do it in order. So yesterday, the governor spoke, and she delivered her throne speech. And in that throne speech, as has been reported by our favorite, the Cayman Independent, but likewise, arguably all of the media houses in Cayman today.
I like how it's become our favorite now.
It is our favorite. It's our favorite. You like that?
Like the royal we. We did this, Ellio.
We did this, buddy. And I appreciate the fact that you don't,
I'm not
contest it. You don't fight it. I got nothing but love for you, brother.
I'll take it.
So whilst we have to wait, and I say we in terms of the larger collective we in the Cayman Islands, we the voters of the Cayman Islands, but also we the residents of the Cayman Islands have to wait, what will be 6 months before the government is able to lay out their strategic policy statement, which will outline their priorities. It would appear that Her Excellency the Governor is in the know, because Governor Jane Owen outlined the new government's priorities in her throne speech during the first session of Cayman Islands Parliament following April's general election. It set out an ambitious legislative agenda centered on civil service term limits, workforce development, and maintaining the territory's financial services reputation. But I just want to stick a pin very quickly. There is certainly an outstanding question as to whether or not the government's priorities that Her Excellency the Governor outlined represented the political arm, though highly unlikely, or perhaps more likely the civil service arm, because as we know, obviously there are objectives set out for the various ministries, but again, they get that direction from the political arm. So, how is it that the governor can say, well, this is what your government will be prioritizing, and not hear it from the government themselves, does draw a bit of a question mark. It is possible these things were discussed at the cabinet level, and she was taking very careful notes and therefore intended to bring it out. But this is the role of the premier, to lay out what the government's plans are over the course of the next 4 years. But as we have stated, in this session, they plan on bringing an amendment to the Public Finance and Management Law to extend the 3-month period following a general election to present the SPS to 6 months, taking the official timeline to October 31st on or before the 31st of October, when they have an obligation to, according to the law, to present those plans in Parliament and therefore to the public. But in this case, it seems like the governor beat him to the punchline.
Well, I mean, it is interesting, and having had the opportunity to be involved in the budget process, both as a civil servant as well as a member of Parliament, I can say that, we used to have the sort of departmental wish list, if you like. So, again, computer services and judiciary, everybody puts together basically what they want to do for the next year, 2 years, or whatever that time frame is. And naturally, that has to go through the process about getting it approved, as you would know, in relation to finance committee and all the politicians looking at it, and they have their own ideas and their projects too. And so a lot of those things probably get cut off where maybe the politician has a specific plan and he needs $2 million to do it, so somebody's got to do some cutting. And so I would think that the governor is primarily echoing what some of those departments are going to be seeing.
Right.
And without me having the chance to kind of really peruse it, it would probably be more of the high level stuff, not so much on the budgetary side, I would imagine, but more some of the high level objectives of the various government departments. And so when the government comes now with the SPS, I guess we would get more, you'd get the specifics that they know requires the engineering in terms of, exactly how much money it is that we're going to spend and specifically what they want to achieve politically and stuff as well. So to echo your point, we have to just wait a few more months and hear what the government has to say and how it complements now what the governor has uttered.
Indeed. So whether you believe the government may be clueless, but the governor is not, here is what the governor said are the new government's priorities as outlined in her throne speech. Starting with, of course, immigration. There is expected to be an immigration system overhaul. The governor spoke of major changes to the civil service, stating that, and I quote, the government is bringing a bill to amend the Public Service Management Act to introduce term limits for all non-Caymanian civil servants. Well, certainly this was announced by the Premier.
And the 2-year rollover.
It was announced by the Premier first and the Deputy Governor, and then thereafter, in terms of the immigration overhaul, it was also mentioned by the Premier and the Present Minister for Labour. Owen explained that these changes are intended to come into force from January next year, affording existing and new civil servants the same term limit and putting in place a 2-year rollover period at the end of that term limit. Again, this we knew. The civil service currently employs about 70% Caymanians alongside 1,400 non-Caymanians who play crucial roles, for example, in our police, our prison, our health and social services, our teaching staff, and many other areas. She noted that the government's broader immigration review, stating it has also made it clear that its intent in tandem with the civil service reform is to consider further changes to Cayman's wider immigration policy, including the rules for permanent residency, marriage, and Caymanian status. And again, there's nothing in those statements that should be considered new, because this is one of the things that the Premier and the respective minister have in fact announced in the public domain. Turning to education and workforce development, Owen outlines plans for further education reform, stating, and I quote, the government intends to work within our public sector schools, in particular, to improve outcomes and opportunities for Caymanians. She said the government aims to ensure all Caymanian school leavers have a route to further education, either at the vocational or degree level, or intended opportunities to take up internships and apprenticeships in the private sector and the civil service. So that is a bit of a news flash. Certainly we didn't know what the wider plans did entail, but certainly they're going to be looking at tailor-making, arguably, the curriculum process, certainly seeking to create and encourage high school leavers to continue their education, either at tertiary level education or vocational level, so that you can learn a trade. I think that is good news.
And on the education, they're also talking about an emphasis on mental health, education, and employment pathways.
Yes. Well, I was going to get to that. The next one was mental health and community support. She outlined specific goals, including ensuring the Poinciana mental, I don't remember the full name of that, but the Poinciana clinic place would in fact continue to develop into a world-class residential facility, and also doing more to support special needs in our schools, which again, I think this is encouraging. What would be even more encouraging, as you know, as most of us know. I mean, once a young person who is suffering from a mental illness or learning disability reaches the age of 16, they're pretty much age out of any programs that are available in Cayman. You know, you have the Lighthouse School, which takes you to a certain point, and that's pretty much it. So it would be interesting, and certainly not the Poinciana mental health facility or residential facility, you know, can't accommodate everybody. And why would you? That would be for more serious cases, persons who perhaps, you know, cannot operate in civil society, need to be removed or otherwise, but also need around-the-clock type of palliative care. But what would be, I think, an improvement to the mental health platform would be introducing some form of assistance and aid to persons with mental health or learning disabilities past the age of 16, which undoubtedly would be a great benefit to the parents of these young people who arguably will need to be monitored for the rest of their life. So we offer that up as a suggestion if mental health is being embraced fully. Focusing on security and law enforcement, without a doubt, this is within Her Excellency's purview. As we know, MPs get the distinction and privilege to approve budgets, but in terms of policies, plans, and ongoing operational details, we can't ask. It's better to, you know, not tell because they won't tell. The governor went on to praise the crime-fighting efforts, highlighting what she said was the excellent work being done by the police commissioner, Kurt Walton, to deliver effective crime analysis, forensics, and detection, which has led to our overall rate for solving crimes rising to 50 and 85% for our most serious crimes. She also noted the ongoing concerns about the availability of guns, just like we were talking about. You can't find a person for 7 years, but now you're looking about guns. Anyway, the availability of guns, knife crime, the increase of engineered drugs, obviously referring to pharmaceuticals, such as the very dangerous fentanyl, but in other cases, ketamine, which regrettably are already in or on our shores and arguably being brought in by gangs and groups, organized crime, and those who support and protect them. Owen also addressed road safety, mentioning government's plans to introduce a penalty point system on driver's license, as well as improving public transport to tackle Cayman's abysmal record for road deaths and injuries. So on those 2 points, again, you'd think you'd be getting a degree of political direction from somebody. And again, we highlight that those elected MPs, are not sharing these details with us, so we have to hear it from Her Excellency, the Governor.
Well, I would say, first of all, I think there should be an addition, as we talked about a couple of days ago, greater transparency, more communication from the police would be good.
Yep.
And I also want persons to know you don't hear anything about the regiment, right, which falls directly under the governor. And that's a topic for another day as well. But again, I think these are primarily departmental plans, and these various departments, in this particular case, the Royal Cayman Islands Police, will be coming forward and saying, here's what we're planning on doing. And a lot of these you can see probably look, you know, rather standard, use that word, right?
Yes.
Well, we're going to do this every year.
I accept that. On international relations, again, the governor's statements seem to echo the statements that we talked about yesterday. They emanated from the Premier's office following his return from Europe. First, he attended some plenaries in France, and then, of course, he concluded his first overseas visit as Premier with the UK. The governor outlined strengthening UK-Cayman relations, noting that the United Kingdom stands ready to partner with Cayman as we, quote, forge a refreshed relationship fit for the future. Ellio, there's more. I got one more in here that I know is going to turn your head or at least tweak your interests. She highlighted His Majesty King Charles III's interest in the territory, stating he is always interested to hear about developments and decisions in Cayman and is a strong supporter of our work through the Commonwealth and our bid in particular to make Little Cayman's coastal waters a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So we do know of His Excellency's love for the marine environment and conservation. But I figured your mind might be piqued when he said, hang on, he's interested to hear about developments and decisions made in Cayman. What could that be?
Yeah, I'm sure he has an interest. I mean, the UK has a very good interest. And when you use the word partnership, I would like to remind you of comments that would come from my good friend Billy Adam, that is. I think he had the saying was something to the effect that partnership, you have to understand, is equally as a partnership relationship between a rider and a horse. Mr. Harris.
Yes.
So don't misinterpret partnership to mean that we're both on the ground walking and holding hands.
That's right.
But yes, there's been a lot of things that Cayman has gotten signed up to. With this Blue Belt agreement that I understand was signed up between Her Excellency the Governor Jean Owen as well as the past Premier, Mr. Wayne Panton, who now sits as Permanent Secretary in the shadows somewhere. But there was that agreement that had been signed up, all of those things having some significant implications on Cayman. And like I said, that's something I want to be able to discuss one day as well. So interesting to know that, yes, His Excellency, or what would we call her? His Majesty.
His Majesty.
Is taking a personal interest in Cayman.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we all feel great?
Shouldn't we all feel good or worried? I don't know. It's, a 50-50 chance. Finally, Her Excellency the Governor echoed comments made by both the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Observers Mission and Cayman's local observers. And I might add to this also recently, even observations, if not statements, made by the People's Progressive Party when it comes to campaign finance. She confirmed the need to update campaign financing rules early in this new term and to address the imbalance between constituencies, even as she acknowledged that this is not her area of responsibility, but of the elected arm of government.
But I remember now that we had went through the various manifestos, or the ones that we were able to get.
Yeah.
Do you recall that being on the manifestos?
I recall it being, actually, it's a very good question. I'd have to look. It wasn't a unified thought, put it that way. If I did see it, it would have appeared on one of the manifestos, though don't ask me right now which one, but I will have a look.
But I think it's something good for us to check because it is now coming up, and the last thing we would want is for someone to play it as if it was a record they had in their hand, when in fact they didn't have it.
No, indeed.
And interesting. So let's see if we can find that.
Her Excellency states, as it relates to campaign finance, she's quoted in the media as saying, I believe this is a gap worthy of consideration at an early stage of this parliament to reflect evolving international standards and to give our voting public more clarity on political funding. Decisions on this aspect, she said, along with any future consideration of election boundaries, are clearly devolved within the Constitution to our elected representatives and to this House. Again, pointing to the fact that these are policies that, while she might like the government to address, it falls outside of her purview to insist or to make it happen. But again, as we stated, whilst we await the official plans and priorities of this new national coalition for Caymanian government, it would appear, and certainly we are grateful to her for sharing at least a bird's eye view of what the priorities might be, could be, and to my colleague's point, may very well represent a wish list from the various ministries that make up government in general. And again, if the government gets their way, and certainly they usually do, if they do follow through on their government motion, we will have to wait, was it June, July, August, at least 3 months before the actual SPS is delivered, and we will remove the speculation and have, again, some definitive knowledge in terms of what the next 4 years may look like, what the next 4 years will be focusing on. And again, this is something we look forward to. I might highlight that this would be certainly some of the areas of subject that we would question if we were fortunate enough to have the government as guest in studio.
Who?
Yeah,
government?
Those are the ones, exactly.
Okay.
Did you stutter? Whose government? The Jamaican government? They'd come sooner.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think we probably hear from the Trinidad and Tobago government sooner than we hear from
But we
our
might
own
have to
government.
discuss that one too. How much time do we have on the clock?
It says 1 minute here, but I'm going to give you 2 because, well, you know how sometimes the system is.
Well, I'll just flag it as we talk about this because I know that there's so many persons out there in the society that believes, like I mentioned yesterday, that colonialism is resiled to places like Africa and that we're not influenced. I'd like to just make sure and stress and show people that we are being influenced every day by the UK and for their own personal interest. I know in some cases, there's that convergence that it actually works in our benefit, but not necessarily to have to be the case. And if you look at how much from the cruise to everything else, if you look at how much Cayman has gone now in the environmental direction, I mean, you have to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything is about the environment now.
Sure.
And I just want to mention it because there's somebody who's going to be thinking this was homegrown. You know, we just woke up one morning and everyone was just eco-friendly and eco-concerned. And again, this is because in large part, just like we heard about His Excellency himself, and no different with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office.
Stick a pin. We have to pause, but there'll be more Straight Talk coming up next.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with a care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
It's trivia every Wednesday from 7 o'clock at Sandbar on the Georgetown waterfront. Your chance to win some fantastic prizes in our free-to-enter Trivia Madness. Great offers on beer buckets, margaritas, and a delicious menu served throughout the evening. Grab your pals and get along to Sandbar every Wednesday from 7 o'clock for the most fun you can have with your clothes on. Are we ready?
Yes, Mommy!
Then let's do this. Trivia, Sandbar, 7 o'clock, Wednesday. See you there.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
At Polar Bear Air Conditioning, we believe in helping you to avoid costly mistakes and replacements. That's why we offer a quarterly maintenance program at a discounted price. You'll receive a 10% discount on all repairs, accessories, and services. Priority front-of-the-line customer status, reminders of your service, and no overtime rate for after-hours calls. Why not save money and avoid hassle with Polar Bear Air Conditioning? Need service now? Book our AC special for just $99. Book the next available technician at polarbear.ky. That's polarbear.ky.
Drinking water is vital to our health. At Cayman Water, we use reverse osmosis desalination to ensure safe drinking water. A semi-permeable membrane allows fresh water to pass through, blocking out contaminants. Then, we finish with a post-treatment process and conduct frequent extensive testing to ensure that you get healthy drinking water with an average pH of 7. Not only is water out of your tap safe to drink, it's approximately 400 times less expensive than bottled water. Help to reduce plastics and save our planet. Cayman Water cares. Learn more at caymanwater.com.
When you're on the go, the experienced team at Foster's Pharmacy are here to help. Drop off your prescription while you shop or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook at the key search word Straight Talk Radio Show with your hosts, Ellio Solomon and myself, Austin Harris, as we continue here on our Open Mic Thursday, where the phone lines were open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp line at 928-2562. From there, you can either share a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. And either way, we will share your comments, statements, or questions to our listening audience whilst we are still on the air. Ellio, I apologize. I reluctantly had to cut you off to go off to that break.
That's fine.
But I want to give you an opportunity, if you so wish, to complete your thoughts on, again, His Majesty's piqued interest in the Cayman Islands, but also I think your wider point that it seems that everybody is all abuzz about sustainability and environmental protection and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I just pick it up from the discussion that we had yesterday, and I'm going to take every opportunity that I have, like a broken record perhaps, to continue to highlight it, the continued influence that the UK attempts to exert, and the fact that there's not necessarily always a great level of transparency in terms of how they're trying to impact the islands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just as we just discussed yesterday with respect to the changes that was made to beneficial ownership. And again, luckily that was, well, coincidentally, that was the same person now that we have as the premier. And we've already heard how some of these things are very damaging to our financial services industry. And we continue, nevertheless, to see our elected officials going right along, hook, line, and sinker, and making a lot of these changes. And nothing different in relation to the environment. For those persons who may have just thought that these were some of these, or that some of these groups that we see among us were just started by a couple of concerned Caymanians about the environment, I take this opportunity to show you that you will see that many of those same organizations are constantly being visited by Her Excellency the Governor, Ms. Jean Owen. And of course, you're now hearing about the King Charles himself taking this special interest in us. And when you look at that, as well as other things that our government, elected government, has signed us up to in relation to environmental treaties, I just want to mention it so that you can pay attention with hopefully a level of reserved caution, but also for those persons who somehow believe that there is not some behind-the-scene whispers of influence that continues to take place in this country, and not necessarily all of that is in our interest. And again, happy to discuss that one day as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, Palamine, before I continue on in the order of, the proceedings to today's meetings in Parliament, which are presently ongoing right now as we speak and commenced at 2 o'clock, I note that once again we are wearing similar colors, or as you said yesterday, within the same hue. The same hue. You've got the lighter shade of blue today, whilst only certain spots are lighter on my shirt, but otherwise they're a darker shade of blue. Well, clearly we got the memo.
The minds are connected, Mr. Harris.
They are, Mr. Solomon. They certainly are. We'll see if we can end out the week tomorrow of the same mind.
Have it coordinated?
We never know. Okay. We never know. We will say to the listening audience, we're not that, well, I won't use the term, some people might take it the wrong way, but we don't notify each other in terms of, what are you wearing today, bud?
Well, it happens, it just happens.
It just happens. It really does. Yeah. We don't concern ourselves with these sort of otherwise vexatious questions. Today is Thursday, and in Parliament, that usually means it is the day of and for the opposition. And certainly the opposition did have a rather full slate, or does have, rather, a full slate on the agenda. The opposition will be asking questions to members of the government. And again, just an educational factor. Whilst we talked about the first premier question time, which mimics the Prime Minister questions or PMQs that regularly takes place in Westminster, under the new government, and certainly happening for the first time in Parliament, questions to the Premier has been introduced, which will allow for, in the first instance, 30 minutes of questioning on the Premier on any matter, and then followed by another 15 minutes of questions on urgent and or pressing matters that members can present to the Premier, in this case, the Honourable Andre Ebanks. On Thursdays, likewise, those questions continue, but more so in a different format. Members of the opposition may submit questions to members of the government seeking elucidation or further information on progress of various government policies and or plans. But unlike the questions that are presented to the Premier, which he has to answer off the cuff without any forewarning, questions to members of government as part of the usual protocol, like most things in Parliament, have to be presented as a general rule 21 days in advance, operating along the same rules as the presentation of motions or bills or otherwise, so that all sides of the House can adequately prepare, but likewise also so members of the public might offer their feedback to their MPs if they know what's planned for the agenda. So today is Opposition Day, and the opposition will have an opportunity, at least according to the order paper that we received from an unnamed source. But we want to thank that unnamed source for providing us with this information so that we can then adequately update and inform you, the listening audience. The opposition will ask 7 questions today. And I just want to note 3 of them because I think they're 3 of significant substance, maybe 4. We'll see. It begins with question number 7, which is being asked or will be asked by the Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition, the elected member for Georgetown Central, asking the Honorable Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing, and Infrastructure. And again, for the shorthand note, that's Kenneth Bryan asking J. Ebanks a question. And the question is, can the Honorable Minister state how many affordable homes have been built in the last 4 years? And does the minister intend to build any affordable homes in the district of Georgetown? Well, again, not knowing the minister's answer, we can state that there have been a number of affordable homes built, albeit in the district and arguably constituency of North Side. But I'm not aware of any of those homes going on in any other districts, but of course, certainly not in Georgetown. So perhaps we will hear later on this evening when we either catch the YouTube link or the Radio Command replay, which usually Radio Command is a couple days behind. So we may not hear that tonight. Again, I don't know what the Radio Command schedule is like. We just oftentimes hear it just as a happenstance. Meanwhile, the newest member of Parliament, the elected member for Red Bay, is going to be asking the same Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing, and Infrastructure. And for the shorthand, that is new MP Roy Tatum asking Minister J. Ebanks, can the Honourable Minister advise whether the work undertaken in 2023 and 2024 by individuals from the UK's Department of Transport to support plans for a modern public transportation system has been completed? And if so, when will the findings or report be made public? Now, this is, I think, a significant public interest question because we have been asking, arguably discussing the need for the development of a viable and efficient and dependable public transportation system for the better part, I would argue, 8 years, because it was an issue that certainly was addressed, if you will, during my term in office. And in particular, I was privileged enough to compile a committee that looked into the reduction in traffic, which one of the recommendations were the implementation of a viable, efficient, and dependable public transportation system. Again, COVID came along and it, put kibosh on all of those plans. It is what it is. So we didn't get to finish those things. Under the last administration, the issue of public transport started with the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, but then it somehow got in the middle of the game, got transferred to Minister Jay Ebanks. At the time, they said they were still, much like the police in the investigation with Judy Ann Miles, they were taking guidance from foreign and overseas experts. I know under the last administration, there were a number of, how shall we say, exploratory trips to parts of the region, in particular Barbados, which arguably, according to most in the region, has one of the best, if not most efficient, public transportation systems. So they were looking at their systems, but I also know they went to one or two other Caribbean islands, again, to, I guess, compare. But they also, to the questions point, also went to the UK's Department of Transport and wanted to know what they do. And they're trying to create, obviously, some form of a hybrid system that potentially could combine what goes on in the rest of the Caribbean as well as what goes on.
Well, I won't be holding my breath. I won't be holding my breath on public transportation. I mean, first of all, it's something I know that I've talked about, put it in writing since at least 2017. I think Cayman should have a monorail system, quite frankly. But that said, it's not something I'm going to hold my breath about because, unfortunately, as we have these single-member constituencies, I'm going to stress again that all, generally speaking, the elected officials has to do is to placate their specific constituencies.
Yes.
And if they get $1 to spend, and I don't have to call names here now. No, don't twist my arm. If they have $1 to spend, it's going to be in their constituency that's going to guarantee a return to office, and not necessarily focusing it, unfortunately, in majority circumstances, on national issues, which would really benefit the country.
Indeed. Another, I think, public interest question will be asked by the elected member for Georgetown East, again to the same minister, and to break it down, that is MP Roy McTaggart, the former leader of the opposition, asking Minister Jay Ebanks the following question. Can the Honourable Minister advise whether the government intends to proceed with the ongoing work related to the Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA, for the proposed extension of the Owen Roberts International Airport, ORIA, runway? Now, again, that is a significant question in the public interest, as they have been, the Cayman Islands Airports Authority have been hosting, in some part, public meetings and public consultation meetings in the public domain on the planned upgrades to all three airports in the Cayman Islands, including the extension of the runway here in Grand Cayman to the Owen Roberts International Airport. Now, whilst it was outlined by both the previous administration and before it in the outlined business case that an environmental impact assessment was a requirement, if not a mandatory requirement, on all three projects, and the government that just passed, gave the impression that these would in fact be done before any forward movement would take place in terms of the renovation or expansion plans. But like most things, they've all gone quiet. So I think it is a relevant question. And likewise, we hope the question does get an opportunity to be asked. And certainly we will look out for the answer. And when we get it, we'll provide that update to you, the listening audience. And finally, again, another question coming from the this one's coming from the Honorable Deputy Speaker, the elected member for Georgetown West, is Perlina McGaw, I believe. Yes.
That's right.
She is asking, again, the same Minister Jay Ebanks.
Well, he gets all the questions.
He got them all today anyway. Actually, no, the Minister of Education and Training would be asked a question also from Mr. Roy McTaggart, and it was a question, can the Honourable Minister advise whether the government intends to introduce reforms to public school governance that would both empower school principals and leadership teams with greater management responsibility and provide for more direct involvement by parents and business leaders? I think it's a good question. Certainly, we want to encourage much greater participation from both school leadership as well as parents. And again, that question will be directed to Minister Ralston Anglin, coming from the MP for Georgetown East, Roy McTaggart. The question, though, coming from the Deputy Speaker, Perlita McGaw, says, can the Honourable Minister advise whether there is a scheduled and regularly reviewed maintenance program for drains in flood-prone areas within Georgetown? Which certainly would be a question that I know for a fact persons in the constituency of Prospect and Red Bay would otherwise regularly ask. And
the flooding issues?
The flooding issues.
Definitely Georgetown West has flooding issues as well.
Granddad Gardens, of course, I think of right away.
Piece, yeah, that's in Georgetown East. I mean, there's flooding issues everywhere.
Yes.
And again, you mentioned Red Bay Prospect. I remember having those same issues in Bordentown, Dumber Avenue, those areas. I think it is.
Yes.
Major
right.
problems.
That's right, indeed.
And you see that this is part of the problem. It's like, how long have you been talking about this?
Long time.
Right?
Long time.
How long have you been talking about flooding issues? It's like, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue.
But to your point, though, if money is to be spent, you would assume it's going to be spent in constituencies, as you stated, with the intended purpose of looking forward to getting reelected. Certainly, these issues of flooding in individual communities has been, a rather, sore subject and a topic of interest for many a moon. But arguably, fixing it would address funding spent in these respective constituencies, which would benefit the various elected members in those communities that would be affected by it, and it would be certainly seen as, welcomed, given the length of time this subject has been on the table. In some cases, there are things you can do. In other cases, there are limits. Like, for example, in Red Bay and Prospect, we continue to mention that, these are reclaimed land areas, lands that were formerly swamps. They got filled, but also the high water table that exists. And, you can blow the drains once a week. But if you get enough rainwater, then they fill up very quickly and they have nowhere to go. So they will go on the streets and whatnot. What needs to be looked at is, what kind of adequate drainage can be done. Can we create, whether it be above ground or elsewhere, drainage tanks that would otherwise cause water to run off? But certainly it is a challenge when you live as an island below sea level in many cases. Arguably, the whole island is a flood zone. But when we think of Bordentown, when we think of even in some cases of Beach Bay, again, the roadside is higher than the inland subdivisions. So arguably those developments are sitting in a bowl. And likewise, when it fills up, water fills up in the communities, but doesn't spill over to the roads. But likewise, it becomes a drainage question. Where does the water go? That is a larger question. But again, you got kids graduating all over the place, mechanical engineers and the like. These are things that should otherwise be, academic, really. And then a question of how much will it cost? But to your point, it has been on the table for a long time.
Yeah, well, I guess I would say two things about that. One would be political from a governance perspective, and the other one would be in the direction of trying to find a solution. If I could address the governance part, again, to highlight, these are the challenges, and this is why I said Cayman should have went in a national vote direction as opposed to single-member constituencies. Let's just be clear about it again. If you're the minister and you're going to help to direct these funds, politically, it says, and look who's crying about the flooding right now. It's the opposition members who are crying about the flooding. Yeah. So Perlina is going to be complaining about it from a Georgetown West perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Kenneth should be doing so again from central perspective.
Yeah.
But where is those money get? Who determines the allocation of the funds and where those funds go? It's the ministers.
Yes.
It's the government. And again, politically, what does the system say to them? It says first and foremost is get reelected.
Right.
And I know somebody goes, everybody going to think like that. Yeah, that's in large part what's driving them. I'm pretty much sure.
Yep.
Right. I mean, go check it out. And again, from a solution perspective, Mr. Harris, where have we heard over the past more than a decade about solutions for that? There's nothing that even precludes any government from getting up and digging the reservoirs that makes the water drain there. The water can be pumped out. So let's see if I get this right. We can engage in a process of reverse osmosis to suck water from the salt, the ocean, filter it to make fresh water. But I can't put it in a little hole, suck fresh water out, and filter that to give even more fresh water to homes. That doesn't make sense.
No.
Come on.
Doesn't make
so
sense.
There is
a will, really.
It's just really about somebody getting up and saying, I'm going to take the will. But again, addressing national issues does not necessarily deal with your local politics.
Yes. No,
right?
Absolutely right. Good point. Just in terms of other business, the opposition do plan to bring at least 2 private members' motions. One moved by the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Kenneth Bryan, which has been seconded by the elected member for Bodden Town East. That would be Mr. Dwayne John Seymour. And the motion is to decriminalize speeding in no-wake zones. So this is along the coastlines. You know, if you use 7 Mile Beach as an example, no-wake zones usually mean anywhere from the shoreline to 200 yards out. We encourage boats and watercraft to travel at speeds usually below 5 miles an hour, or in some cases below 3 miles an hour, where the vehicle or boat vessel does not produce a large wake. And the reason for that is a safety reason. You've got swimmers, you've got snorkelers, in some cases you've even got divers operating in these areas, and if boats or watercraft are speeding around, then you could really see a disaster in the making. I'm not quite sure how much success the decriminalizing of this effort is going to have, because if you decriminalize it, then what do you do with the warning? I suppose you could turn it into a fine, and hit people in their pockets, but we're talking about personal safety, which is not just directed at our tourists, because they're not the only users of the beach, but all residents of the Cayman Islands. But it is one of the things, or the first motion deemed important by the opposition, and it will be brought today. The second one, I don't know. We can argue about this one as to whether it's necessary or not. Private motion number 2, which has been moved by, again, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Kenneth Bryan, and seconded by the elected member for Georgetown West. So you got Perlina McGaw, and then who's Georgetown West?
Perlina.
Say Perlina? Okay, Perlina McGaw, the Deputy Speaker, calling for a motion to implement a year-round NICE program in Grand Cayman. Now, the NICE cleanup is usually done, as members of the listening audience will know, usually done twice a year, one at Christmas time and one at the mid-year around summertime. Now, arguably, we've talked about this. The state of litter in our local community has gotten worse in recent years. There was a time where cleanliness, as we used to say, is next to godliness. People cared about their immediate surroundings. People cared about whether or not they threw garbage out the window whilst they're driving. But whether it be the influx of our new population and persons coming from elsewhere, or we just got lazy and realized that nobody is watching, so really what's the risk? But litter has become a problem. And the NICE cleanup was designed to provide 2 weeks of work twice a year and targeted individuals who either had no job or certainly had low-paying jobs as a means of putting some money in their pocket initially before Christmas time, but now recognizing the growing number of unemployed persons, clearly suggesting there was a captive audience. And why not? Because we needed to clean up the streets anyway. This proposal would largely recommend that these cleanups happen around the clock.
Well, I'd like to give a little history on that, because I took some
2 minutes.
What is the time? I took some beatings on that one when we first came up with the Pride cleanup, in large part because the economy was in a big major problem. We found ourselves in a deficit position, and amongst other things, took pride, or tried to make sure we established some pride in keeping our country clean. And I remember the government at the time, the PPM, beating me to hell up about that, saying that, again, this was just campaigning and a way to hand out checks. And I reminded them that I was actually handing out shovels and rakes at the same time. But of course, when they took office, they went ahead and continued the cleanup program, just changed the name from Pride to NICE. But either way, I think it is a program that's necessary, and it does give persons an opportunity, rather than going to NAU for those persons who might be concerned, rather than persons being able to, or having to go to NAU and beg for $1. I think this allows persons to be able to maintain a level of integrity and actually know that they can work for it rather than just simply going and getting a handout. But when we come back from the break, Mr. Harris, I think one of the things I'd like to touch on really quickly is this whole issue about decriminalization. Because one of the challenges, I remember years ago thinking to myself, shouldn't you be able to make this country great considering how small it is? But there's a factor there's something that has to be factored in with that. And that is the proximity that individuals have to their MPs. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're getting a lot of decriminalization in this case about the wake issue. Discussing whenever we get a break.
But you do have about at least another minute, maybe a little less. So if you want to talk about,
well, I can start it by saying, the thing of it is that I listened very quickly to the parliamentary session in terms of that particular one, and I remember the member there, Mr. Brian, saying something, and then it was being agreed to by the minister as well. And with the greatest respect to both individuals, one of the things that was echoed right away from Minister J was, yeah, I know I've had somebody complain to me about this in my constituency as well. And again, that sounds good. And knowing that some particular person has been arrested is not good, and how that has an effect on their criminal record. But again, from a national perspective, which is what you're alluding to in your comments, we still have to say, am I addressing the national concern of speeding in a boat and injuring someone?
Indeed. Well, we'll pick it up when we come back following the news right here on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Bobo.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation. OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News. World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive win.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has described the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities as the most complex and secretive military operation in history, but gave few new details about their impact. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has now acknowledged what he called serious damage from the strikes, saying an assessment was underway. Mr. Araghchi disputed President Trump's assertion that there'd be US-Iranian talks next week.
No agreement has been made to resume negotiations now. I'm stating clearly that no agreement has been made, no promise has been made, nor have we talked at all about restarting negotiations. But the fact that we are examining among ourselves what is in the interest of the Iranian people is another discussion.
The Hamas-run health authorities in Gaza say at least 40 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes that intensified overnight. Rescue teams removed their bodies from 7 different attack sites. One strike targeted a Hamas police unit in a busy market in central Gaza, killing 18 people. Residents told the BBC the officers were investigating the alleged looting of humanitarian aid when the drone struck. This man says he lost his sister in one of the attacks.
In the night, I was surprised by a phone call telling me that my sister and her children were killed in a strike that targeted the school. I couldn't believe it. I rushed to Shifa Hospital. I found her and all her children.
The US State Department says it's approved $30 million in funding for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a controversial US and Israeli-backed body set up to distribute aid in the war-torn Gaza Strip. A spokesman said the US urged other countries to follow suit with support. The UN says it's deeply concerned by the violence that left 16 people dead and hundreds injured in nationwide protests in Kenya on Wednesday. Most of those killed died from gunshot wounds. Thousands of businesses were looted and many razed to the ground after battles with police. The Interior Minister, Kipchumba Murkomen, condemned the unrest.
This is nothing to do with protests. This is nothing to do with freedom of expression. It was an unconstitutional attempt to change the regime of this republic. Yesterday, what the police did to foil was they were able to foil an attempted coup.
3 days of national mourning have been declared in the Central African Republic after 29 pupils were killed and hundreds injured in a crush during high school exams. More than 5,000 students in the capital Bangui were sitting the exams at the school on Wednesday. World News from the BBC. Exactly 80 years since the signing of the United Nations Founding Charter, the Secretary-General has warned that the institution is facing unprecedented attacks on its core principles and purposes. Antonio Guterres told the General Assembly the UN Charter was under threat.
Today we see assaults on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter like never before. The threat and use of force against sovereign nations, the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure, the weaponization of food and water.
The hard-right Sweden Democrats Party has apologised for what it called its past anti-Semitism. A report it commissioned also acknowledged links with neo-Nazis. With more details, here's Risto Pöke.
Sweden Democrats are now the country's second largest party and keep the centre-right government in power. But it's long been known that its roots are in right-wing extremism, and now the party has acknowledged this. Many of its founders were members of an openly fascist group, and it maintained ties with the far-right well into the 90s. The party now says it's a mainstream one, and the report, with its confession of past sins, is part of this rebranding.
The British journalist Anna Wintour has announced she's standing down as the editor of US Vogue magazine after almost 40 years in the role. Known as one of the most powerful figures in fashion, the 75-year-old has gained a legendary status in the industry. The lower house of Congress in Mexico has approved legislation that bans entertainment events involving dolphins and other mammals, such as orcas and sea lions. Dolphin shows where tourists pay to swim and take pictures with the animals are a popular attraction in Mexican resorts. But campaign groups have denounced the cruelty behind the profitable industry. BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. We're your hosts, Ellio Solomon and myself, Austin Harris. Time in studio is now 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock as we move into our final 30-minute, give or take, segment. Ellio, you were making a point before you were again abruptly interrupted. I apologize.
It's fine. It's fine. It's the way it is. We need a clock. I can see one. So, but again, I want to just challenge some of the things I'm seeing here in relation to some of the decriminalization stuff, and I suspect and hope that Mr. Bryan will call in and give us more details in relation to this specific motion. And my comments are not geared specifically at this, but as a general one, because it's more than this one that we've discussed in relation to decriminalization. And one of the things I'm observing is the fact that, again, the proximity that the politician has to the voter. And let me try to spell out what I mean when I say that. You're going to have a politician and he knows Fred down the road. Particularly if he's in his constituency. And the mother of Fred comes, Fred was arrested because X, Y, and Z happened. And you want to try to resolve some of these problems. And in your efforts perhaps to find a resolution to these problems, I'm suspecting that this is where we get a lot of what we're perhaps seeing in relation to decriminalization, etc., as opposed to looking at this thing through a national lens. So this is where I'm saying that you can see that if one starts off looking at Cayman and say, why can't we resolve the problems of this country? It's so small. We should be able to fix all these problems. I'm saying that proximity is one of those, because it means that almost everyone as an individual almost becomes a lobby group in of themselves, because you have so much accessibility to the politicians. Because to me, if it's more viewed as strict governance and with a more national lens, I think you would have less efforts in that regard, because persons are going to say, let us understand that this person made wakes and got arrested. Luckily, nothing went wrong. But what if they had been making the wake, Mr. Harris, and ran over someone and they get butchered with some propellers?
Yeah.
Then it would be a different discussion. You probably wouldn't be saying we need to do X, Y, and Z. And this is where I think you have to have a governance of a national lens that allows you to say, well, maybe we need to find a way to educate the public so that they know exactly where these zones are. I don't know if we're putting red buoys. I don't know what we're doing, but we need to inform persons, because we equally have to appreciate the fact that this is a serious issue. If you're going to have, and let me throw it this way, women and babies and men swimming and potentially getting cut up because somebody came speeding through in an area in a boat where they're not supposed to be speeding.
That's right.
So I just want to highlight that, because I think that is something I'm seeing, and it has me a little bit concerned.
Yes. No, I think for good reason.
I'm seeing the motion here, and just so person members can hear it, whereas speeding is in a no-wake zone of a marine park is considered a criminal offense. And whereas criminal records continue to create job opportunity hurdles for many Caymanians, and whereas speeding on the roadway is not considered a criminal offense, and whereas Section 19 of the Cayman Islands Constitution Order requires that all decisions and acts of public officials must be lawful, rational, proportionate, and procedurally fair. Be it therefore resolved that the government considers amending the relevant legislation to remove the criminality of the offense to make it equal to that of a traffic offense. And be it further resolved that the government considers this as an urgent matter due to the unintended negative effect on Caymanian employment and travel opportunities. And again, similar sentiments being expressed, as I would state, in relation to the marijuana issue.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just draw something. First of all, I think we have made it clear, and I remember having discussions in the past, for example, about drinking and driving.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at it with the gravity to say that, let's be clear, anyone who gets behind the wheel of a car knowing that they're drunk has engaged in what many of us should be able to determine as a reckless disregard for life, including their own.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can cause harm to someone when you're sober, even worse now when you're drunk. And so therefore, it is supposed to be a criminal offense to get behind the wheel of a car if you are drunk, right? Because you're going to guarantee you're going to kill, almost guarantee you're going to kill somebody. Very, very high likelihood. But let's just draw a distinction, because the traffic offense of speeding is mentioned. And don't get me wrong, I think a person who's speeding in their car is almost as bad as the person who is driving when they're drunk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's a difference. In this particular case, if you're speeding, at least you have the ability normally, unless it's a child running out in the street after a ball, you're normally able to see what's happening on that landscape.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the situation in the water. In the water, there's someone who's diving and you have no idea that they're probably there.
Right.
And they themselves might perhaps be breaking the rules and not necessarily having one of those little buoys with a flag or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to surface. Or in fact, they don't even have to surface. They just have to be high enough in the water that while you're making your wake, you're going to wake and rake over them with a propeller. So I don't think that you're comparing apples to apples. And so again, I just expressed this concern that I have, not to knock anybody's efforts to try to do the right thing, but it concerns me in relation to the proximity issues that we're having, and that we're looking at it, in my humble opinion, not through enough of a national lens, as well as a lens of being able to say and make determinations as to precisely what is right and what is wrong. It seems like I had the same issue about the marijuana, and I know that you and I have had lots of discussions on this, but to me, I think, as Confucius once said, and I might paraphrase, life is pretty simple. We just make it complicated. I'm going to make it very simple and very clear for you. If the thing that you are doing does not sustain life, does not improve life, does not enhance life, does not make you live longer, etc., if it does the reverse, if it shortens your life, if it's going to cause you that you'll be puking in a couple of years or drowning on dry land because your lungs are not working, it should be illegal. And at the minimum, if it's not illegal, the government should tax the hell out of it, because they're going to need the money to help take care of you when you're sick. It's pretty straightforward. And we can start bending the rules as much as we want for financial reasons, social reasons, and who my friends are. But there has to be a clear distinction, as far as I'm concerned, as to what is right and what is wrong.
Sure.
No need to blur it.
745.
My God, you want me to get you a glass of water, Bobo?
I got a glass of water, and it's a
drink
warm,
it.
It's a warm glass of water as well to deal with the tickling in my throat, but not just really.
Yeah, we don't want to comment about that. I mean, hey, you know, keep that to yourself. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to
change up your argument.
I don't want to go there. I don't want. Hey.
Trust Ellio to turn it into something it's not.
Yeah, just had to give you something to laugh about.
2626 is the number. If you've got a comment on, in this case, of course, discussing the private member's motion, one of two, that will be brought today in Parliament by the opposition, seeking to decriminalize, let me just make sure I get it right, to decriminalize speeding in no-wake zones relevant to Cayman's coastal waters. I think Ellio makes an excellent point. Though on the other side, I think the mover of the motion, the honorable leader of the opposition, highlights that speeding is not an offense, not a criminal offense, is a ticketable offense, and suggesting we should put the two together. But I absolutely agree with you for the same reasons that I stated, that there are human lives at stake. There are people swimming, there are people snorkeling, there are people diving. That is in place to protect it, protect those lives. We are a tourism destination, and heaven forbid, a tourist will lose their life because somebody was in a rush.
Yeah, any one of us.
But certainly, likewise, not just putting greater impetus or importance on a visitor's life over a resident or local's life. Not at all. All life is valuable, and certainly for them to lose their lives because, again, someone is a little impatient to get to shore or wants to run up and down in their personal watercraft, there should be penalties. So I wonder in terms of how successful that motion will be.
Well, I think it has passed, but
it did.
Yeah, my understanding is it's passed, and again, like I said, not to focus specifically on that, but it is a general thing in relation to governance and how things are being impacted that I wanted to highlight, right?
Because you got a caller on the line, and I
go straight to the phone.
I do believe it is the mover of said motion.
Okay.
Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. I was right. It is, in fact, the mover of said motion number one, the Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Man, I heard you say leader earlier. You know.
Well, I'm seeing the future. What
I'll say clairvoyant.
How you doing, Mr. Bryan? How you doing?
I'm thank you, gentlemen, so much. I'm so happy to see that you guys are very real time responding to what's happening in Parliament, and I thought I would offer up some rather key points of what happened today. I think you touched a little on some of them, but to let you know what was the end result on both of the motions, Parliament is concluded, and will resume tomorrow at 2:00.
Okay.
So both private members' motions were debated and concluded. The first one was approved, the one upon which Mr. Solomon was just speaking of, which is to decriminalize basically speeding offences in no-wake zones. And there's a distinction between no-wake zones and swim areas. So hopefully that we may put a distinction between the difference between the two. But the second one, which is to turn the NICE program into a year-round opportunity, was failed. And it actually created much controversy by the minister, who's the elected member for Prospect. I'll be honest with you, I can't say how disappointed I am with his remarks, calling the program a waste of time.
Who's that? Who's that?
That is
Mr. Michael Miles.
Michael Miles.
Okay, wow.
You had a brain freeze there for a moment.
Yeah, and calling it a vote buy-in program, saying that it's a welfare state program. I mean, I was flabbergasted by it.
Wow.
By his response. So much so that I called it
very
division.
strong statements and shows a very clear disconnect, really.
Go ahead with that, Mr. Bryan. You call it division?
Yeah, I call it division because, interestingly enough, I want to know what's going to happen now because they're ultimately saying that there will be no more NICE program and they do not support it, which begs the question what's going to happen in Kimmerbrook right now because the proposal was on the merit of Kimmerbrook having a successful year-round program, which happens to be 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And he kept on referring to young people as if to say it was only young people who were a part of the program. I'm trying to be obviously political with his assertion, saying stuff like, which kid wants to grow up to work on a NICE program? Of course, nobody wants to work on a NICE program, but there's benefits and opportunities of transition from one job to the other. Persons who, coming out of prison need a job until they find a secured one. And it's obviously not something you want to be a permanent situation, but have it available when people need work that they can find it. But also, I try to tie the tourism component for the national branding. Cayman has always been known to be a very clean place, and obviously we're straying away from that. And this would create a double benefit from keeping the place clean as well as creating opportunities at all times. And I think that while the minister, and I gave him so much credit too, and I'm so surprised because I said, I know that he's on an agenda to fix work and immigration, but while we transition to putting in the new procedures and reforms necessary to ensure that Caymans have job opportunities until then, which, we normally have around 500 and above people who come out to these type of things, that over a year or 2 or 3, once the things that they implement come into effect, maybe the numbers will get smaller and smaller. And I only moved the motion on the basis that for so many years we keep on hearing the various different departments and SAGCs who say they need more help, parks and recreation, public works, and all of these other ones who need help to keep up with the growing development of our society and the growing population, because the more growth you have, the more cleaning you need to do, but yet still we're not increasing the numbers.
Well, absolutely. Mr. Bryan, if you don't mind me jumping in, because I thank you very much for educating us on this, because I got the chance to listen to this first motion a little bit, but didn't get to hear the second one at all. And I'm very disappointed I'm very disappointed if in fact that is what Minister Miles said. I'm taking you by veracity of your statements, because what then is to happen with all of the NAU programs and stuff if this is how he feels about cleanups? Because I would have thought that if someone is in need knowing that they're willing to pick up a rake and a shovel and a paintbrush or do something productive to earn that money is surely much better than simply filling out an application and going to NAU.
It's less of a handout, and it allows persons to maintain their own personal pride by working for it, albeit cleaning the streets or otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's very, very disappointing
Very
that
disappointing.
this would come from Mr. Miles, who happens to... Is he still the minister for NAU?
No, he's not the minister for NAU. He's the minister for Caymanian
Immigration.
Employment and Immigration.
Okay.
So from a labor perspective, I was surprised it was him that actually responded to the motion.
Right.
I was hoping or thought that it was going to be Minister J.
Yes.
But interestingly enough, in his in his contribution, I think you guys are going to enjoy listening to it because it went so far left so quickly. Many people on his own side was quite surprised. And said stuff like, well, even me and Minister J is going to have to agree to disagree on this one.
Wow.
And it showed, what's happening here. I had to point it out. I go, what do you mean by that? I mean, you're saying that there's a disagreement amongst the government. Ultimately, Minister J wasn't even there for the vote because I called for a division. And I'm really surprised, and the Minister for Cameron Brack West, that is, because ultimately the Minister highlighted Minister Miles, that is. They said the government will not be supporting a nice program because they don't believe in it.
Wow.
So what does that mean now for the Cameron Brack component, which is currently active? Now, it doesn't mean anything for Grand Cayman because there's not one active.
Right.
But all those people on the program over there, are they going to shut that down altogether? I think that's the only working program that they have over there outside of working for the civil service.
So that would mean they cancel the one in Cayman Brack, and then you would cancel the one that takes place in Grand Cayman twice a year.
Correct. Basically. So it was rather interesting, the response. I tried to elicit to get them to give some clarity to it. He was the only one that spoke, and I called the division, and they stayed firm on their position. So
all the members of government voted down?
All the members of the government voted it down.
Wow. You see, again, that's amazing, right? Because, I've had a lot of respect for Minister Miles. I mean, or I should say Mr. Michael Miles. I mean, he was involved with what I saw, particularly with our young persons engaging in the vocational training, all these sort of things.
Yeah, Inspire Cayman, I think.
I would think, if anything, like I said, to me, having a Caymanian come and be willing to pick up a shovel, a rake, a paintbrush, whatever, is much better than simply saying I'll fill in an application and collect a check. Yeah. I think one is much more honorable. And I would have thought that this would be an opportunity for someone with that vocational background to say, well, how can I enhance it?
Yeah.
How can I make it that a person can learn a trade while they're doing something? So that by the time they're finished of the 4 weeks that they had to work, they're much better skilled and get a certificate from the government, better increase their chances of getting a job. Very, very, very disappointed. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yes.
Well, I recommended you guys listen to it. And I won't dwell much more there because obviously I'm biased. I'm in the opposition. But I want you to hear it for yourself. And I encourage the public to go to the Parliament website and listen to it because it was a really disappointing response by him. I couldn't believe it. But the first one, I'll quickly leave you with this, but I know you have to wrap up the show.
But then I want to ask you something about the first one because you draw a distinction between wake and the swimming area. So what is what then is the difference there?
Well, I mean, I think your focus, I was trying to listen, so when I get the cue to call in, when the lines are open, that you said, the concern about somebody maybe diving and so forth, right? Yeah. There are areas where you're not allowed to a no-wake zone, but it's not necessarily a swimming area. So, and to think that a person will get a criminal record if they went 6 knots as opposed to 5 knots as in the law, when I personally believe that you can be just as dangerous speeding in a car and be, you can kill somebody just as easily. I think, matter of fact, there's more human beings on land than there are in the sea. So I do think that the magnitude of what criminal records mean for Caymanians nowadays, I can understand recklessness because in the traffic law, if you're driving recklessly, whether drunk or not drunk, it's a criminal offense. But just simple speeding over the limit is a traffic offense. So I think that there's room for distinction between that because, and you also highlighted the fact that just because a constituent came to us, most times you find problems within law by way of somebody bringing it to your attention.
Of course.
Right? So I mean, it was brought to our attention, and the minister that responded, Honorable J. Ebanks, did say, he found it similarly to some of his constituents are dealing with the same problem.
But here's a quick question for you. Can you think off the top of your head of an area where a no-wake area that is not there for the swimming or diving?
Yeah, the canals.
What canal is that?
Any canals, canals.
Any canal that you're driving into with Prospect, you're not.
Even got them over there by Old Governor's Harbor.
So if there's a no-wake area that can't possibly cause a harm to life, is it not better than to perhaps remove it?
No. I don't think you should remove it altogether because the no-wake is for other things other than human life.
What is marine life? What is that? Educate us.
Okay, the marine life. So, for example, there's in a marine zone, you're not supposed to be going too fast because it affects the marine life. You have no-wake zones in the canals because of the mangroves.
Turtles.
So,
hit a turtle.
I mean, turtles, all these other things. But I mean, to think about the effects of what a criminal record could do to somebody, I think it's not fair. It's not proportionate, in my humble opinion. But just to wrap it up, to close it up, because I want to definitely have Mr. Austin close up as he normally does, is the motion gave opportunity for the government to say, are there laws out there that are not fair and proportionate and maybe carrying things too far, quite similarly as the people have recognized with the decriminalization of marijuana in small amounts. So the public says, okay, come on now. I don't think we want to criminalize people for that. So maybe we need to do a holistic look of all the legislation. Is there some things that are not fair and proportionate in today's day? And that was just an example. So the scope was a little wider. But I personally don't think the young man who brought it to my attention, not able to go to school now as a result, and look how it came up, because he was going 7 knots in a no-wake zone. I mean, I think the damage of that is just too much. But
Mr. Brian, before you hang up, I mean, let's just be clear, first of all, that, I have a lot of respect for you in terms of all that you're trying to do, and don't make anything that I'm saying, detract from that at all. Thank you very much for your call. Greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
No problem, big brother.
Brian.
I really appreciate you guys' show.
Yeah,
Keep it up. Everybody tune in every evening. This is the new hottest show. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Brian. Well, that is concerning and something for our listeners to watch out for. We will replay Mr. Miles's comments tomorrow on the program.
We're going to discuss that one.
Tune in. That's all the time we have for today. Have a good night.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
With you in mind, we have your style. Find what you need down every aisle. You want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. Home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
Ever met the drama llama? You know, that noisy beast that turns every team meeting into a stinky, dramatic mess. They are known for causing a disruptive office. Cayman HR's conflict management class is where your team learns to squash drama, speak the same language, and actually enjoy work again. Come see Cayman HR. Just don't bring the llama. Fun, fierce, and proven conflict management. Learn more at caymanhr.com today. Cayman HR.